Tracker's gonna live the nation, and Spectrum's got such supervision. M.A.S.K is a mighty power that could save the day. M.A.S.K, no one knows what lies behind the mask charade. M.A.S.K, always riding out on Venom's trail. Comes to the laser rays, fire away.
Hey guys, this is David with Matt-Trakker.com coming at you from the Boulder Hill Archive. We're going to talk about some comics tonight. Last time we looked at the mini comics. Today we'll start looking at the DC comics that were officially released by DC for mass market release. So, the first one we're going to look at today is the M.A.S.K special preview issue. So, in September of 1985, this comic came out, but it wasn't given a traditional retail release. It was actually stapled in the middle of regular DC comic books in September of 1985 is the cover issue date. So I would say sometimes I think they came out earlier, so I'd say it probably came out sometime during the summer to kind of hype up the cartoon. So it's the first mass marketed one. It came out probably right before the cartoon hit, right around the same time. This was on the shelf, so very neat issue. So let's talk a little bit about this one. Okay. So the big thing about finding this issue is that you have to find a DC comic dated September 1985. My personal issue is a issue of Tales of the Teen Titans. I know there's a couple sites online that do have a couple listings of these issues. I'll put a description below. The Agents of M.A.S.K actually has done a lot of research on this topic. I'm not going to redouble the effort, but there's issues of of Detective Comics, Action Comics, Batman that do contain this issue. So if you're looking for this issue, I would suggest when you go online or go to your local comic book shop, ask if it's in there or ask to look in the issue. It'll be stapled right in between the pages with the regular comic. So I have seen some of these separated out, but for the most part, that's the easiest way to find it if you're going to go look for it in the wild. So talking about this comic, it starts with Matt-Trakker driving a Formula 1 race car. And I just lost half my audience because you all are thinking this is about the racing series. It is not. The U.S. comics never go into the racing series. They only cover up series 1 and 2. So it's kind of interesting that Matt-Trakker is driving a Formula 1 race car way prior to the racing series. He's still the millionaire we know and love. The first preview issue basically has the first series of M.A.S.K characters. There is no Gloria or Vanessa. Scott and T-Bob are present, as is Dwayne Kennedy from the cartoon. So there is a nice bit of continuity there. There's also mention of the first time of Contra World. Contra World's a weird thing in M.A.S.K comics. It's not mentioned ever in the cartoon. So Contra World was the evil equivalent of the PNA. They were the backers of Venom, and they describe it in the comic. Venom in the comic is Contra World's mercenary arm. It's basically a stand-in for the Soviet Union. It's kind of poorly defined even in the comic itself. We do see in the regular M.A.S.K series a little more going into Contra World. But the first time it's ever mentioned, as far as I'm aware, this is the earliest reference to it. Dwayne Kennedy's present. So there's a lot of elements of the cartoon. So the comic, when I first got it, I was really hoping it was going to be a retelling of the origin story, maybe going into some more detail. It is not. A summation of the story is Matt-Trakker's driving in a race. He gets a call that Venom is attacking Mount Rushmore, where Scott and T-Bob are. There's a call-up sequence just like in the cartoon. He assembles the M.A.S.K agents. They all assemble at Boulder Hill, and then come rushing in to go and save Mount Rushmore. The comic itself nothing particularly special happens in it that puts it above, this is a comic you must read. It's interesting that it's one of the first M.A.S.K publications ever put out there, and one of the first mass market release comics out there. Long story short, M.A.S.K shows up at Mount Rushmore. Venom takes hostages. They try to blow up Mount Rushmore, but Brad tricks them with a hologram, and Mount Rushmore is saved. There's really just nothing too special about this comic. If you're looking for it, I definitely say it's worth picking up. But if you're kind of on the fence about it, this is one I feel like you might be able to skip. It's a neat little story. It's only about 14 pages long. It's nothing crazy, but definitely worth picking up. So pricing this issue is difficult in that you're going to pay whatever the back issue you find it in is going to run. I believe I picked my copy up for $4 or $5, and as far as I know, none of the DC comics at this time had anything super noteworthy happening. So I think most of the issues, for the most part, you'll be able to pick up for $4 or $5 to get the M.A.S.K one. But like I said, when you look for it, look for September 1985. I'll post a link with a listing of some of the known comics that it does appear in. And like I said, check with your seller or check the comic book store, ask them to see if they'll let you look inside. I know a lot of times they have them bagged, but definitely look inside because it's a neat piece of M.A.S.K history. One other interesting note is that this was made very early in M.A.S.K's life cycle. They described the cartoon as being a 5-part miniseries instead of the full 65, later to 75 with the Racing Series cartoon we know and love. So this must have been done very, very early on. Doug Stone in interviews has stated that they kept expanding out the number of episodes going on. So it's kind of interesting as a M.A.S.K relic. It's definitely an interesting piece of M.A.S.K history. The story itself is nothing spectacular. It's Venom attacks Mount Rushmore, M.A.S.K assembles, responds, and saves the day. There's no origin story. There's nothing else really that makes the story itself stand out. But as a historical piece, this is definitely one you might want to pick up. I definitely recommend it. The artwork is very nice. Very cool book. So that's the M.A.S.K preview issue. We're going to move on and look at the M.A.S.K miniseries. I know I'm not holding it up very well, but I'll post the pictures up so you guys can see them. So these comics were published in December of 1985 through March of 1986. So this would have been during M.A.S.K's big breakout success when it was first created, during the height of the cartoons run. So the artwork is pretty good on the covers. The third one has probably one of the worst drawn Miles Mayhems ever. He doesn't look anything like Miles Mayhem at all. The rest of the covers are all pretty good. Beautiful artwork in these books. So, like this other one, we do get Dwayne Kennedy back. We do get Boulder Hill looking very much like the cartoon. These books basically will also pull in the second series of characters as well, so we do get a pretty good spread of the M.A.S.K and Venom team. Everything basically prior to the Racing Series does appear in these books. So, the story is, the overarching story there's a couple subplots going on, one of which is trying to steal a defense laser that the government's using, think Star Wars program from the 80s. There's also a subplot where Scott and T-Bob are kidnapped, and Dwayne Kennedy is kidnapped, and Dwayne Kennedy's replaced with a duplicate. So, I won't go into every last bit of the plot and just go through some interesting issues. Issue 2 Well, most of what I just talked about is covered in issue 1, setting all that up. Issue 2 has a really interesting subplot in which it's something we never got to see in the cartoon. We get to see Nash Gory infiltrating M.A.S.K. As I said before, Dwayne Kennedy was replaced by a Venom operative. He was a generic Venom agent, nobody special, who basically had Gory infiltrate M.A.S.K. as a mole. So we kind of get to see Gory doing a lot more here than he ever did in the cartoon. So if you're a really big Nash Gory fan and a big fan of Outlaw, we do get to see him. So it's really cool in that regard. Other things is Hunter McClane does drive Hurricane in this, and interestingly enough, he is still in his firecracker outfit with the Blaster 2 mask. Outlaw has the stripes like in the cartoon, not the traditional design. So it does have a very cartoon feel to it, and it's a very interesting story if you do like the cartoon. And like I said, I really like the subplot with Nash Gory being a Venom mole that infiltrates M.A.S.K. Some of these comics were reprinted in the U.S. I'm sorry, the U.K. And we'll go over that later. So some of these comics we will double cover. So bear with me on that. The third issue has M.A.S.K. going to Scotland Yard, and it's kind of an interesting story where basically Venom attacks. We also get to see in this issue quite a bit of Gloria Baker, who looks very much like her cartoon counterpart. She's also driving Shark at this point, too. Vanessa Warfield also appears in the comics, so it's very nice that we actually do get to see Gloria in the comics. She didn't appear in the UK comics at all. So, great job seeing Gloria in the comic there. And in the final issue, it basically wraps up a lot of the story. Venom gets control of the giant orbital space laser, and M.A.S.K. has to stop them. Interestingly enough, Venom destroys the Space Shuttle Challenger in the issue. So, that's kind of a really weird synergy in this issue. Like I said, I won't cover every single plot point. And then, with all these comics, there's just way too much that I could ever talk about in a few-minute video. So, the 4-issue miniseries is something that's really cool, and I really do enjoy it. The preview issue you could probably maybe somehow shoehorn in the cartoon continuity, but in these issues, Venom is very much aware of M.A.S.K. identity, and this, unfortunately, the really cool Nash Gory subplot kind of makes it so you cannot fit this anywhere reasonably in the cartoon continuity without doing some mental gymnastics. Like I said, we get to see things like Dwayne Kennedy, that was originally in the cartoon. The call-up sequences are very much like the cartoon. Gloria Baker's here, Vanessa Warfield. So we do get to see a lot of these characters still in the books. They're very cool. Talking about the price of these issues is a little bit difficult. I only paid a few dollars a piece for them. For reading copies, basically. If you're very patient, you can basically get the 4-part miniseries here for, I would say, less than $20. $4 or $5 an issue, I'd say, is pretty much the tops on them. So there are very cool issues here. And like I said, these are a great part of M.A.S.K. history. These came out at the height of M.A.S.K. popularity. When I was a kid, I never knew of these comics. I don't think a lot of people did. The books, I don't think, are particularly rare. I do see them come up on Facebook. People buy M.A.S.K. lots, and usually you see 1 or 2 of the issues in the background, when people buy big lots. So they're not particularly rare. The preview comic, though, is definitely something I don't see come up. Of the U.S. comics, that's the last one I picked up because I never knew it existed. So I really want everyone to know the preview comic existed. The miniseries, like I said, is very, 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 very common out there. It's well worth picking up if you're just trying to get your feet wet in the comics. It's a very nice place to start. I think you can get into it with a very limited expenditure. There's familiar elements from the comics. The writing is very typical of the 1980s. I don't think it's going to blow anybody's perceptions away. And you have to accept these comics are going to be products of their time. That said, the 5 issues I said I have here that could probably be easily bought for, if you play your cards right, a few dollars a piece, $4 or $5, maybe at most. And you can possibly start your M.A.S.K collection for maybe less than $20. But you have to be patient. Some people will try and tell you they're rare. They're really not. I've seen them in my local comic book multiple times. I've found them online. I bought them at flea markets. I actually have about 3 sets of these issues and I wasn't even trying to garner that many. It's just kind of the way it turned out in life. So it's something I would be patient for. These are like the earliest M.A.S.K comics that were released, and like I said, they do have a very nice synergy with the cartoon. They're not quite in continuity with the cartoon as much as I really want them to be, but they're very, very neat in that regard. So after this, DC basically decided that they were going to do a full issue run, a regular ongoing series, which we'll be covering on our next episode. So I'll keep a lookout for that one in the near future. Those books don't really tie into these. They're not prerequisites for anything. There's these issues. The 4-issue miniseries is a complete standalone story. The preview issue is also a standalone story in and of itself. So these are ones you can read without having to worry about a lot of continuity. If you've seen a little bit of the cartoon, you're good to go on these. There's no origin story listed in the miniseries either, so that's a little bit disappointing. So I'm going to let you guys go with that, and this has been David with Matt-Trakker.com, coming at you from the Boulder Hill Archive. Hope you guys all have a great time. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and see you again on the channel. Thanks. Bye.
Spectrum's got such super